Welcome to Dreams for Society series, presented in 3 parts by Lisa Hayes and Iva Nasr.
This series is a call to action to imagine, visualize, and create.
With every recorded interview and conversation, we have a text description below every video, timestamp links to specific segments in each video, and more detailed contact information. I'm Iva Nasr, mentor, speaker, author. Find me at ivanasr.com.
And I'm Lisa Hayes, transformational life coach, speaker, author. Find me at dreamsforsociety.com and dreamsforyoucoaching.com. Thank you for joining us. Please enjoy and share this series.
Hello, dear listeners. This is Iva Nasr, and I am very happy to be with my friend and colleague Lisa Hayes in this part 3 of our Dreams for Society series. This last episode is indeed the golden capstone to our 3-part series. And we are sharing with you today miracle stories that we have each experienced, mind blowing. And we hope that you get to enjoy this experience with us. So, hello, Lisa.
Hey, Iva. Hey, did you know that today is the new moon in Aquarius, February the
Oh,
11th,
oh,
2021, new moon in Aquarius.
I always
So,
need a little nudge
yeah,
remembering some of these references. So amazing. That's a good time, isn't it,
it's
for
a
new
good time.
beginnings?
It's a good time to seek these miracles and get them going, girl, for the rest of the year and get that golden capstone in its place. So,
I'm ready.
yeah, me too. This is going to be exciting, dear listeners, dear dreamers. Anyway, thanks for being here.
So, a quick recap. Part one and part two of this series. In part one, I interviewed Lisa, and she told her amazing journey from lawyering and lobbying stress to coaching, blogging, bliss, and shared a few of her metaphysical experiences along the way. And in part two, she interviewed me about my journey from child of war to the peaceful visionary, writing my magic carpet and telling some of my miracle stories. So please refer to these 2 episodes because they detail both our stories and also share the concepts that we have intended to impress in this series. And anything you want to add, Lisa, before we just go into storytelling?
I think that you summarized it very well. The first two parts of this series do lay the foundation, give a little bit of background about each of us, how we went from, like you went from war to roses, and I went from stress to bliss, and this joy that we can tap into now, like a new color that an artist would use on their canvas. Once you see it or feel it, you want to keep going back to it, and we know how to do it. And so that foundation was laid, and now we just want to share stories, and not stories of yucky stuff, stories of angelic miracles, right, Iva?
Absolutely. And the stories that we're sharing today, amongst many, many, we had to just pick a handful. Otherwise, we'd be recording with you for hours on end. The ones that we are sharing today really emphasize how when we are in the mindset for new possibilities, when we open up and are alert and tune in and clean up mind, body, spirit, that these seeming phenomenal experiences can actually become part of the norm. So that's the intention, more than anything, is to not tell just what we individually have experienced, for the purpose of creating this time with you today as a marinade, so that we can all soak in these magical juices together and hopefully influence and invite more of these miracles into our lives.
Yes, and I know that the dreamers out there have experienced many miracles as well in their lives, and we'd love to hear about them. If you want to comment about them at the bottom of this video in the comment section, or just get out there and share these miracles you've had in your life with friends and family. It's time to remember them, because these things are happening every day to us. And I'd rather talk about these miracles, this phenomena, than anything else right now.
Well said, well said. And the storytelling, when we share just an experience without explaining it or justifying it or anything, related to the analysis of the experience, but just sharing it is magical in and of itself. And yes, please share with us your stories. Let's keep this exchange going.
Well, Iva, do you want to start with a miracle of yours?
Okay, wow. Some of these experiences, Lisa, you have heard from me in some detail, but some of them I think are going to be a little bit more of a surprise to you, actually, in the detail that I experienced them. So okay, this is what I'm going to start with. This is what's coming to me. Several years ago, I was with a friend of mine, and we were on our way to a coffee shop, and he is a phenomenal being as it is, truly lives mainly in this mindset that we're highlighting today. So he doesn't need to be convinced on any of these phenomena anyway. And I'm, in a pretty good place myself in that regard. And we had just gotten back from a seminar that highlighted, the realm of all possibilities, and how transformation can happen in seconds, and that you can do quantum leaps into different time zones, and all of that. Okay, so we were more than prepped. Okay, so we're in a van parked to go into the coffee shop, and he was on the phone finishing up a call that came in just as we parked. And I get out of the van. He was driving. I get out of the van to wait for him. And then a few seconds later, I see him put the phone in his pocket, and now he's out of the van. And as soon as he closed his door, it's like we both knew that he had forgotten the keys in the ignition. And the doors were locked, of course, because how can we have a dramatic story to share if that wasn't the case, right? And we looked at each other through the opposite windows, me from the passenger side, him. And we looked at each other, big eyes, and then our eyes went zoomed into the ignition, and lo and behold, the keys are hanging from there. And so, me being the obedient, well-trained human being, knew that I had AAA card in my wallet. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, we'll call AAA. And we're each walking on the side of the van to meet in the back, but we couldn't see each other because it was a pretty tall van. And in that short distance, like walking a few feet, I could feel how our thoughts were communicating silently. And I went from going triple A. What do you mean triple A? There are so many other possibilities here. Why am I limiting it to just calling AAA to come and help us? I mean, I'm grateful that AAA is a service accessible, and I've definitely used it in the past. I immediately switched to those channels that are readily available. I mean, I live my life knowing that these things are possible. I just forget sometimes, you know? So anyway, and we had just returned from this amazing seminar, so I had no excuse. So I switched gears. My mind went to, what if we were to experience an amazing, unbelievable, mind-blowing happening here? By the time I had that thought, we had joined each other at the back of the van, and we just looked at each other, nodded, this very, sneaky smile, no words. And now we're both walking together from the driver's side of the van back to the front, knowing that we were both percolating with this like possibility of, are the keys really still in the ignition? Did we really log them? What if we do a little time travel in our minds, invoking the universal forces of divine presence and intervention? What if we go to 5 seconds before that door closed on the van, and they indeed were not left in the ignition? What if? Big question mark with a lot of elevated emotions and thoughts backing it up. So we walk to the front. As we're starting to look in through the window again, he reaches in his coat pocket and pulls out the keys. Lisa, Lisa, I know, especially for someone who has not experienced like this level of phenomena. It defies logic, it defies everything. But the keys were right there. Like even for us, that was, you could tell our eyes were about to pop out of our heads, but with these big smiles. And so we just looked at each other. We made sure that the van doors were still locked, keys in hand. We walked into the coffee shop, ordered coffee, and went on with the day. So that's my, I'm launching with this
What I
story
love,
today.
and what I love about it is that you're not discounting it. You're embellishing it. You are not embellishing it. I shouldn't say that. You're not embellishing it. You're saying exactly how it was. You're giving it amplification in a sense that these things are real by retelling
Oh,
it.
absolutely. And I have to retell it for my sake and for the sake of my service in this world. But don't tempt me to go into too much explanation right now. I want to stay in the vibe of the feeling and
Yeah.
reliving that. So your turn. Match this one, Lisa.
Okay. Well, I have something similar. Yeah. About 5 years ago, I was down on the beach in Florida with my sister. It was a beautiful day in July, and I have been following Bratzo. I don't know if anyone out there has heard of Bratzo. He's from Croatia and he gazes. And so he came to Indianapolis years ago, several years in a row, and I accumulated some of his jewelry. Well, on that particular day, I had on my earrings, my ring, my necklace, which I shouldn't be wearing that to the beach, but I had it on because I hadn't taken it off for 5 years before that. I wore it to bed, everything. It just had this encoding in it. It was very special to me. It kept me grounded in a sense, grounding that joy that we've talked about. And so for me, it was just a treasure in my treasure box that if I wore it, it seemed to work. So I had it on and I wanted to go out for about an hour swim. So I never, like I said, never take the jewelry off, but I didn't want it to attract the sharks or whatever. So rather than put it safely in my beach bag, would you believe what I did, Iva, when I took that jewelry off?
What did you do?
I took it off, put it safely bundled up in my towel, rolled my towel up, put it on the chair. Well, I didn't roll it up like really stiff or anything. I just kind of bunched it up or whatever. I thought, I'll remember that. But I get out into the ocean. I'm having a ball. I come back. I pick up my towel and I'm drying myself off and I start feeling my earlobes. I don't have my jewelry on. Because I would always feel my earlobes because I was always afraid I was going to lose my jewelry.
Just out of habit.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm like, what happened? Where is it? And then I remembered that it was in my towel and I start looking down and it's nowhere because I didn't understand that gold sinks in the sand and then leaves no trace.
Oh, the
Yeah,
weight
just like
of it?
quicksand. Yeah, it's like quicksand.
Okay. Oops.
Anyway, my sister and I, we must have searched. I know we searched for at least an hour and we didn't realize that if you dig, you just dig, it just goes down deeper. We dug and dug and dug everywhere. And we had 2 umbrellas and 2 chairs and we were digging outside of the umbrellas, just trying to think, well, maybe it flew out of the towel as so we're all over the place. And I left my ring on, I guess, because it was just the earrings and the necklace. So 3 pieces. So after about an hour, I said, Laurie, we're really getting sunburned and we're supposed to be having a good time out here. I'm okay. I really am. I'm okay. Let's just stop. And she said, Lisa, are you sure? I know how important those earrings are to you. I said, yeah, they're where they're supposed to be. I was starting to realize they're in the sand. They're there for a reason. I'm not sure why they're there, but I'm not going to deal with that right now. I just know that everything's in divine order. That was sort of my little saying then and now. And so we get back under our umbrellas. Laurie starts to read my sister starts to read her book. And about an hour later, as I'm sitting there in the chair, and I wasn't reading or anything. I was just sitting there sort of relaxing, trying to meditate. I said to myself, I am not letting go of this. I still am attached to these earrings and necklace. I want to let go of my attachment to this. They're where they're supposed to be. I'm never going to be able to find them again. We tried. We even tried to call a metal detector company, but it was Friday afternoon. We couldn't get a hold of anybody. And I knew as soon as we left that spot, they're totally gone.
Maybe AAA would have helped.
I know, we should have called AAA. But, it was just one of those things that I had exhausted every avenue, and I just wanted to have peace with it. It just wasn't happening, though. An hour later, I was just still in that state in a sense, not real bad, but enough where I hadn't let go of the attachment. So I have this little, as I mentioned in my interview, when you interviewed me, I have this little mantra: accept, appreciate, and approve. So I utilized that and I just said over and over again, accept, appreciate, approve, over and over again. I said, please allow me to let go of this. I want to accept and appreciate and approve of my losing. But hey, I didn't lose, because for every gain, there's a loss. It's, just 2 sides of the coin. It's the same coin. And I realized that I didn't lose anything, because that was countered by the sand gaining it. So in a sense, we all gained together, right? And so I kept saying, accept, appreciate, and approve. Gently, I slipped, and I want to say gently, and I want to say slipped, because that's how it felt. I slipped into what I now maybe can call an infinite field, because it wasn't empty, yet there wasn't anything in it. It was like everything had been lifted up and out. And also it felt like, though, that this infinite field is what I called it years ago, and I'm borrowing that term. It was the place that had all possibilities of creation, yet not a place to create. It wasn't black or white. It was sort of gray, and there was no evidence of anything tangible there. And it just didn't feel like a playground. It just felt like an infinite field of possibilities. And I didn't feel sad or happy, or I didn't even feel joyful, but it was a very calming,
Mm,
great
mm.
space.
I know what you're talking about.
Do you? Yeah. And
Mhm.
so after however long, I want to say a few seconds because I was getting antsy to get out of there because I was like, hey, this is an interesting space. I want to create. And I get out of that space. I opened my eyes. I looked over at my sister, and she was moving her chair back a little and then under the shade of her umbrella, and she was gently rubbing her hand by her feet. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, well, for about the last hour since we stopped looking, every time I move my chair, I just kind of rub the sand right in front of my feet where we haven't dug, just to see if the jewelry's there. And we realized, obviously way too late, that we weren't supposed to be digging. And she was just doing that. And I said, oh, that's sweet, Laurie. And I was sort of in a trance as I was watching her. And really, literally, only about 3 seconds had gone by since I opened my eyes and she was rubbing the sand. She said, Lisa, look. She pulled out one of my earrings.
Mm.
I'm like, this is crazy. I just went, oh my goodness. And chills ran down my spine. And she just rubbed a little bit more and she pulled out another earring. And then she pulled out my necklace.
Oh my goodness, all together in the same spot?
All together in maybe like 3-inch area. So to me,
And Lisa, those are,
that was a
I
miracle.
remember those earrings because you wore them. I mean, was at Brazzo a couple of times too. Didn't know you as well around that time, but I remember they're those tiny little, like almost like star shaped earrings, right?
Yeah, they're
Like little
13.
stub, almost like little stub earrings.
Yeah, well, no, I have they dangle
Oh,
down,
those dangled down.
and I
Okay.
have it's a 13 pointed star.
Okay. Okay.
It's the symbol. Brazzo's mentor, Ivica, actually designed it, and it has come to symbolize that what you and I were kind of talking about off camera. Iva, maybe this jewelry represents the infinite field that Brazzo taps into when he gazes.
Maybe, but point being, they're delicate and tiny, and you
Mm-hmm.
found all three pieces, or your
Yeah.
sister, in that
Yeah,
one spot.
right.
How do you how do you explain that? I guess it's not to be explained.
It can't be other than it's just so much fun to talk about, isn't it?
What was your reaction? Like, since you were in that mind, like in that space that you just described, what was it like when you saw them in her hands? Like, do you remember?
It's like I want to go back to that infinite field all the time because I'll never know what happens next, but whatever happens is going to be a miracle. I mean, I just felt like it was a miracle, even though it was a material thing. It was more than a material because, like I said, this jewelry represented some kind of frequency that really helped me. And they were rather expensive. I mean, not very way expensive, but you have to be in person to get the jewelry. You have to be at one of his events. Now, with COVID, you actually now can start ordering some of this online, but I looked at the online store and they don't have exactly what I bought. So I think it was really irreplaceable. Plus the energy that it held my energy too, because I'd been wearing the pendant, which was right at my heart area for 5 years.
You know what? Um, I'm not going to share actual uh, stories related to this uh, specific topic of objects disappearing and then reappearing in illogical locations. But I have to tell you, Lisa, I have experienced so many times, and luckily, a handful of those times with a witness. And my mom's really good at invoking. She gets really, with this smile and this like twinkle in her eyes, she gets really determined when we lose something that it will be found. And she'll recruit her angels, and we joke around in our household. And then she has a couple of friends who know this too. If they lose something, they'll call her and they'll say, Nadia's angels we need your help. You're like, so the crew that helps us find objects are called Nadia's angels. But honestly, just to reinforce what you're sharing with your jewelry story, and then in a way with that keys, come on, in the ignition of the van, turning up in the pocket. But we've had so many stories, like we'll lose something and we will look everywhere. And usually it's an object that can only have been in one or two places, like impossible to have been, like somewhere in the bedroom, but then we find it in the garage kind of thing. So I love experiences like this.
Me too. What do you
To me, it's like dessert,
know? And what do you think about the fact that we both had co-conspirators, so to speak, with us that helped us, that facilitated this miracle? I think that makes a big difference, don't you?
Well, that opens up. I mean, that opens up a conversation. Maybe, hey, we said this was only 3-part series, but no one said we won't start another 3-part series. But to me, I far from needing to be convinced that we have presence, we have guardians, we have telepathy. So we help each other as human to human in the most amazing ways. And we have access to, I call them councils from multi-dimensional realms. Call them angels, call them ancestors, call them loved ones in spirit, ascended masters, infinite labels. But typically that's the first place I go when I start recruiting. I'll text a few friends, I'll call you, and I'll recruit, It's like, okay, everyone, we need to find this missing object.
Have you found that I find it's more effective if I call on a specific guide and ask specifically what I would love to have happen?
That could be. I mean, that's definitely, it's interesting you say this, because right before you said it, I was going to say, I have a parking angel who I talk to when I'm approaching a place and it's busy time of day and I want the prime location, and to get out, to park and run my errand and come back, So yeah, I mean,
Yep.
the thing is, it's meant to be, and it is a very playful, uh, I guess, experience, or like once you open up and allow for the beginning of these experiences, and I don't know, just being convinced that this is a possibility to talk to a guide, then all sorts of things happen.
Right. And we don't need to be in the healing arts. We can be in the middle of a chaotic career. I remember one of my clients at the State House, she said getting back to your parking angel or parking genie or whatever, she said that she always found a parking spot because she had some guide or some way to open that field for her. And I was always amazed at that. How do you do it? I asked her, and she said, just do it.
And, one thing that I am aware of from experience is that when I share a story like the ones we're sharing, and especially when we start saying, you can assign, I like that you said genie, parking genie. The idea is not then for someone else to try it and feel like they've succeeded or failed, or then to call me on it. It's not, the idea is to engage our minds in the possibilities, and whether they end up manifesting in this specific experience or not is not where we need to like hold each other accountable and put each other to the test. The idea is phenomenal things happen we have access to things way beyond our imagination. And if you're willing to open up and invite them in, things will happen.
I agree. And these little genies in our mind, they can help us wake up when we need to. They can help us um, be ready for a meeting or remember
Yeah.
the meeting.
Yeah.
I always say thank you to my little helpers in my mind. Oh, thank you. I appreciate your reminding me of that.
Oh,
Or,
gratitude is a must, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. On this note,
you got another good one for us?
I have this is a mini story. This is one of the shorter ones, but with big impact. I
Go
love
for it.
those short and sweet and mind blowing. Uh, okay, years and years ago, I was still living in Bloomington, Indiana, and I had just come across uh, Angel Speak, one word with an E at the end, the little book that fell in my lap in the most auspicious way at the library. That a story in and of itself. Point being, I was beginning to experience things like this book coming to me. I read it. I'm it's resonating. It wasn't in my like habitual daily practice, the things that it was suggesting, but yet there was this like deep familiarity that this makes sense and I know it and I feel like maybe I have been that, you know, phenomenal being before. Just that feeling when you start feeling seeing that something is familiar. So obviously I was meant to be um, reintroduced, okay, to a part of me that had been forgotten. So it was around that time period, and that night I was living alone in a house, and I had a plant like kind of close to, I forget exactly what it's called, not quite a rubber plant, like one of those with big leaves, but similar. So it was, and it was, I loved it, and it was very healthy. I mean, and I love to take care of, you know, plants and things like that. Tend to have enough of a green thumb, luckily. So, but that night, I was walking from my bedroom to the kitchen, and it's in this living room area, and it looked dull and it was droopy. And I was surprised because whatever was happening felt fairly sudden because I had been taking care of it. But it really looked, and I had watered it and did not overwater, none of that, right? Like the things that should have been done were done as usual, but somehow it was asking for something. And I thought, well, maybe it's time to repot it. Maybe it's time to bring it a little extra fertilizer. I'll tend to this tomorrow because it was late at night. I go to sleep with the invocations that were in my mind from that little book that I was reading, and basically, you know, introducing communication with angels and that, you know, just kind of that general theme. So I was tweaked and prepped. So I go to sleep, and I don't always remember dreams very clearly. I know some people do have very vivid dreams all the time. Mine are few and far in between the ones I remember. And every now and then there's one where I know that I was asleep, my eyes were closed, but was it really a dream, or was I in some kind of altered reality? Okay, that was the feeling that night in this dream. So in the dream, I'm sitting cross-legged on the floor in front of this plant. And in my dream, it was actually like it was in real life, quote unquote, just hours before I went to sleep. So we're sitting in front of each other. And then I realize in the dream that, oh, I think I'm talking. We're talking. The plant and I are talking, not with words. It felt like telepathically. And then in the dream, the energy in the room changed, and it went into this like very soft glow between gold and orange. It created this vacuous feeling between me and the plant. So it was just us. It felt like it was just the two of us in the entire universe. It was just the two of us. And then I realized that as we're communicating, anytime in the dream that I tilted a little bit to the right, the plant swayed with me. And then when it went back to center, I straightened up. So we were in dialogue. Okay. And then I think that was it. I woke up, or my dream went to something else. Here's the amazing part. The next morning, I wake up, do my routine in the bathroom, and now I'm ready to go get my tea in the kitchen. And I'm walking past this plant that just hours prior was droopy and failing. And it was erect and tall and proud. Like it had this boost of life in it. And if that wasn't enough, I was in awe. And you would have had to be there, you know, in my shoes, to really know that something unusual had happened. I know you know this feeling, Lisa, right? And this is where I become a little timid sometimes, because I feel like I need to justify, and it's one of those moments where I regret not having taken a before and after photo that are timestamped, like evidence of, you're
Yeah.
right. So not only was it revitalized, I came and I looked closer, and it had overnight in several places sprouted new leaves.
Mm.
So that was at a moment in my life where I was meant to start really plugging in to these realities again. So that was it felt like an initiation, you know, like it's time, Iva, to bring this experience into your life. You know, you can get in the car, run an errand, go to the post office, do this, and you can also revitalize a plant through a dream state without having to go get in the car, go to the hardware store, buy a fertilizer. So there you have it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Have you thought, Iva, about how the plant affected you, revitalized you?
Oh, naturally, right?
It takes two to tango, and there was an interface between the two of you.
And the one thing I did not check that day is if there was like little green sprout coming out of my ears too, you know?
Now that would have been, you would have gone to the doctor. I'm
But I
sorry.
hear what you're saying, Lisa. I hear what you're saying. And thank you for this question. Thank you, because now I get to relive the same experience with this perspective that you're highlighting, just like you did with me in part 2 when you were interviewing me, and you asked me a fresh question about those mirrors. Okay, it's not
Yeah.
going to make sense to the listeners now if they haven't listened to that episode, but I'm not going to say anything more. But thank you. This is why I love sharing these stories with you too, because you bring your insight and your guidance and your channels to it, and it changes it all over again for me.
What was it? It was as if that plant was telling me that, hey, don't leave out the fact that it was a inner exchange
Oh my God, you know what I'm seeing right now? Okay, so I just shared how I walked from my bedroom to the kitchen and I noticed the plant and I was in awe. Now the plant is showing me that its eyes bogged out of its own sockets
There
when
you
it
go.
saw me and how I had changed,
Yeah.
you know, walking by. So if only, oh wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. You're human. So having sprouts, grow out of your ears wasn't quite appropriate.
Yeah, and the plant is saying it also regrets not having one of those old Polaroid cameras to take a before and after of me, you know?
Yeah. But who knows? And, in meditation down the road now, I'm thinking the plant's going to tell you more about what happened that night.
Okay, you're giving me way too many temptations, because I have one or two other really powerful plant stories. One that happened just about a year ago, but I am not going to go into that. But just to tell you, yes, and I'm going to, after we finish our time together today, you better believe I'm going to be revisiting all of them, and with new eyes and giving them new life to see what else happens.
Oh, I think our plant kingdom is very undervalued.
Oh my
And
God.
there's so much mystery and metaphysical abilities to tap into. You know, trees, plants, they're so
Birds,
wise.
animals,
Birds,
yeah.
all so
They're
wise.
the nature and technology. By the way, just as a footnote, again, I'm really seeing now that you and I almost must have another conversation with the listeners on some of these basic concepts. But nature and technology are one of the most accessible. They're like some of the easiest access points for this divine, uh, other divine dimensions to speak to us. They speak through, not only is it coming from nature, which is in and of itself miraculous, but nature and technology, some mechanical things are clear channels. They're easy access points
Yeah.
for
When you're
these
talking,
phenomena.
yeah, you're talking about like things coming in on the radio, which happened to me. That's
Yeah, or like a lamp flickering that has
flickering.
nothing wrong
Yeah.
with it, and depending on what you're saying, or if it's, or if like my grandfather in spirit is trying to catch my attention, he typically comes in a specific, over the years I've learned it's almost like a Morse code. He flickers it in a specific way, a lamp,
Oh.
right? Anyway, but just that, you know, when you mentioned nature, it
Yeah.
made me think of also,
Yeah. Oh,
uh,
that's so cool. So when
yeah.
the light's flickering out there, listeners, you'll know there's someone giving you a message.
Yeah, it's not always a short in the wiring.
Right.
It's something else.
But stay with us. Don't think we've gone too far woo-woo. Let's see if I have a
Oh,
story in me,
yeah,
Iva.
yeah.
Um,
I proudly stand as being labeled as woo-woo. It's okay.
well, let's go a little woo-woo. You want to talk a little bit about instantaneous healings?
Yes, I just got like goosebumps all over my body. You get started. Start us off on this one.
Well, we have a lot of stories, you know, on this topic as well, and it was tough to narrow down the one story that I'll share with you and the listeners. So it was about, well, it was September of 2017, as a matter of fact. And for those that don't know where Mount Shasta is, it's in Northern California, and it's supposed to be the land of Lemuria and Telos, the city underneath. It's got a lot of folklore associated with it and a lot of grandeur and mystical stories. I won't go into all that. I love Mount Shasta, though. I've been called to go there about every 2 years at least. So I was there in September of 2017, and this happened to be the fourth month in a row that this healing protocol had come to me. The very first one in June. Now this is September, and so I used this healing protocol because there was this lady. We were up in, if anybody's been to Mount Shasta, we were at Red Fir Flat Campground. We were cooking our dinner on the hot wood coals, and I was helping out, and another lady, Christina, who's an Australian, but she was living in Bali, and she was also really into the healing arts, energy work, and all that. She was favoring her finger on her right hand, and it had a blue cloth on it. And I said, Christina, what happened to your finger? And she said, oh, I don't want anybody to really know, but I am in excruciating pain. I said, oh my goodness. She said, I burned myself while I was cooking just now on these hot coals. So she lifted off the blue cloth, and there was a blister that I swear it was a half an inch to an inch high. I don't know how it could not have popped. It was so big and full of inflammation and everything. And I was like, oh my goodness. said, Christina, would you like to do a co-creation here, a healing co-creation? And she said, oh, I would love to. So we held hands. I was very mindful of her finger with her blister. And we were a few feet away from the fire, and the other campers with us on this tour, the spiritual tour. So we were all kind of in that modality with the Sasquatch nearby in the beautiful pine forest of Mount Shasta. We stood there, oblivious to anything around us at this point, and held each other's hands. And we stated an intention that I suggested to her the protocol that I had downloaded 4 months earlier. I suggested to her, now you see your same finger, the middle finger on your left hand, right? You feel that. Does it feel really good? She said, yeah, it feels great. So now visualize an imprint of that finger going over to your exact same finger on the right hand.
The one that has the blister.
The one that has the blister. So visualize the healthy, perfectly well finger imprint taking hold of the one with the blister and becoming that wellness right now. And so she did, and I did too. And together, this energy surged through me like none other. I don't know what we were doing, but we were cooking something up. It was pretty wild. I think we were kind of shaking. There was so much energy between us. Oh, I hit my mic. Boom, boom, boom. And
sound effect.
Yeah. And so after a few seconds, it really wasn't that long, maybe a half a minute, whatever. We had our eyes closed. I opened my eyes, and she could tell that I had opened my eyes for some reason, and she opened hers. And I said, well, I think that your finger's going to be pretty good in a little while. And she said, well, first I want to tell you that I have never felt so much energy go through me in my entire life. And she took off, she said, oh, wait, first she said, I cannot even feel my finger. It's completely numb. She took her cloth off, and we were both amazed because there now was a callus there that typically would take 3, 4, or 5 days to a week before you just get that flat callus, like a callus you'd get if you were playing tennis, holding the racket. Gone was the huge blister. It was like almost completely healed. And we were, what happened? So she went over, we like, okay, whatever, miracles happen, and we went on our own way doing other things. But about 15 minutes later, she called me over. Lisa, come over. And you could hardly see anything on her finger. She was telling the other ladies that she was sitting with about it. And the guy that was heading up the little tour thing, he had a radio show in Washington State. And I was told that a friend of mine said, do you know what the guy said on his radio show? He said that the Sasquatch healed her finger. I said, he healed her finger.
That's an option.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that is important for me is we can have others help us facilitate, but in the end, it's us internally that is recognizing that we're well and perfect, and we just have to remove the distortions.
Do you want me to match the story immediately with something?
Yes, please.
At this point?
Yes.
Do you have anything else to say about it? Or
I think that's
the highlight, right?
I think that was it. It's just amazing what we can do if we put our mind to it.
And we always say, I mean, I know I do, and I've heard you also preface when we not just tell these stories, but when we're inviting others to open up and what it's like to download a program, what does that mean, how to process it, how to apply, like the little bit of that step by step. I know that we always preface with, it's not right or wrong, and it's okay for a blister to take a week or more to heal, and it's okay to go maybe put aloe vera on it, or like all of that is part of all possibilities, so it's not a right or wrong. However, if you had the chance to make it go away in minutes, wouldn't you? That's the question. And that's where, in my practice, where I still need practice, where I like still slip sometimes and forget, that's how I bring myself back. Like, it's all okay, I mean, aloe vera as a remedy is just as miraculous, thank you, aloe vera, for example, right? But then I ask myself, if I had the option right now, I'm putting out energy, I'm using time and space. If I were to use it differently, and if it would have a different outcome that bypasses extra steps, wouldn't I go for that? That's my leading question, which takes me into this little story. And when the first time you shared with me your story about this blister, I remember that's when it invoked me telling you, right, about
Right.
the time that, and this was not too long ago. Let's say, I don't know, about a year and a half ago. So in recent time, after I've been well seasoned with a lot of other experiences, so I was a little bit more practiced at switching gears, but still a little forgetful. I was in an empty condo, empty because it was being prepped for my parents' move. So they hadn't moved yet. And I was there kind of as a gatekeeper because we were doing a few changes and renovations. So I had moved in to oversee. So it was vacant, and I was here alone. And I had a chiropractor appointment coming up, and I wanted to take a shower, get myself ready. And so here I am in the shower, and silly me, I let myself get emotionally worked up over a memory. Had to do with something that had come up in a relationship with someone. And for some reason, whatever got me to thinking about it, keyword thinking, I went into that state, and my brain took over, and it reminded me of this thing that happened and that thing that happened. And I just was locked in that state. And so I'm, scrubbing my elbows and I'm doing this, but I could feel like with worked up energy. And now I was finishing up, and I had one foot up in the corner, the side of the tub, just drying off. And I was still really, like, even the way I'm remembering it right now, clenched jaw, clenched teeth, and just really upset, and having a live conversation with that person over that one thing, right? Totally recreating it. And it was, my blood pressure must have been off the charts, right? If I had measured it right then. So I'm in that state. And because I was like forceful energetically, the way I was rubbing my foot, it slipped, like it pushed it off the side of the tub, and my body just like catapulted forward, and I hit the faucet. Is that what you call it in the tub? Is it also a faucet?
Yeah. Ooh,
Okay.
I can visualize that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I like, I cringe when I remember. So I hit it, and my head like literally bounces off. That's how hard of a hit it was. And
Yeah.
I just knew, like, I just knew and could feel that I put like either a crack, but at least broke flesh in my forehead. I just knew it. So I immediately go into, because I was already in that other channel of angst and anger.
Mm-hmm.
The next thought that I had is like, oh no, what am I going to do? and I'm alone and I feel dizzy. And does this mean I go to, one of those 24-hour, care clinics? And what if this and what if that? And right, like there were other, it just spiraled. I was already, like living the future in a very uncomfortable way. And as I'm stepping out from the tub, having these thoughts, this other side of me, which is just as powerful, stepped in. It chimed in and said, Iva, 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 seriously? With all the places that your mind can go, with all possibilities, is this the only thing you want to commit to? And then that little switch drew my attention into remembering how those car keys, manifested in the coat pocket, to what happened with the dolphins, and what, like it just triggers. It's like switching a channel that only tells these other stories. And then, of course, from the knowledge and experience I had gained from, matrix energetic seminars and all of that, that suggest the relativity of time and space, that we have multiple time zones in our existence, not just from Central Time to Eastern Time to, right, Pacific, not just geographical time zones that way, which, that's a little bit of a fabricated reality as it is. But anyway, but there are so many other, meaning that time travel is a suggestion in that protocol. You talk about protocols, right? It's a suggestion that if you were to go back just a few seconds before I hit my head, if I were to go there and to have a different temperament about me, that I wasn't this worked up, that I was more in my body, I was more centered. If I were to go back just a few seconds before that happened and I choose that route, what would it look like? That was the question that I put out in a few seconds. So now I'm getting out of the tub, out of the shower, and both I had this other worked up, scary feeling and this new possibility of let's go over here instead. And I joke about this because in that split second of putting out this other question, I felt really dizzy, which sometimes happens when you shift consciousness like that. It gives you a little wobbly feeling in your body. And I had just knocked my head, so I had a little wobbly feeling from that. So I joke and say I had jet lag because I was doing time jumping, like we went into a different zone, gave me jet lag. And I was a little out of sorts, walked to the mirror over, in the bathroom and lean in, and lo and behold, there was little blood coming out. It wasn't gushing, but it was there. I had cut into my forehead. But I was still now in this new zone. And I kept repeating, if I were not to have been in the state of mind, if I were, so I did this time travel exercise and decided that I definitely needed to go lay down, had my hand, just symbolically on my forehead, did a little meditation, reinforced only that outcome that I was now remembering, breathed, and as I was breathing, I must have fallen asleep for a few minutes. It couldn't have been very long at all, because when I went to take the shower, it was only about an hour before my chiropractic appointment. So I had that as a time reference. Okay. So when I woke up, I go, whoa, where am I? Oh yeah, that's right. Oh wait, that's what happened. I wonder what my head looks like, and I wonder if I should still make my appointment, right? So I go back to the mirror, and Lisa, again, this is one of those times like, why didn't I call someone FaceTime to be my witness when like I was, so no one else can testify. No one else can testify except I experienced those things for me And I'm not in that mode, like I want to prove it to someone. You know, when you're in it, you're in it. You're not thinking, you know, will everyone else believe me, right? Like it's not even about that. But telling the story again, knowing that there are listeners who may or may not have had experiences like this, go, come on, you know.
Mhm.
So I look in the mirror and it had disappeared. It was completely gone. Again,
Wild.
as minor or severe as the cut was, it's a cut that typically takes a few days, then it scabs a little bit, and then you maybe put a little vitamin E to help the scar. And it was gone except for a little bump, and it was a little sore,
Wow.
but it was gone. And okay, I had experienced enough phenomena up to that point that, you know, a good part of me was like, okay, wow, thank you. And I'm so glad I switched gears, because I would have been by now maybe, you know, sitting in a clinic somewhere waiting for someone to put a band-aid on it or suggest a couple stitches, right? So that's what happened. And I kept my appointment and I went to see Nick. You know, Nick, if you're listening, you remember me coming to you that day. And, you know, he never ever denies my stories, and he's, you know, witnessed a couple of things with me over the years that he just at least lets me be. And I said, check it out. It's, is there anything else? And then I was like back to the other mode. I'm like, could you check to see if I gave myself whiplash, you know, from
Yeah.
that? Can you make sure I'm so he did his thing. So I covered all bases. But there you have it.
Oh, I think it's
Oh,
amazing. I think it's so real. And these things happen. There is another way. We can switch playgrounds like you did, jump timelines, as you said.
enjoy the process, take your time. You know, if you try it once and it doesn't show that kind of outcome that might be more dramatic, it doesn't mean it's not working. You know, like commit to that openness.
Exactly. The letting go of the attachment to the outcome is so important, and allowing whatever happens and being fine with it. That's why I use my accept, appreciate, approve as well. You know, just following our joyful excitement, taking it as far as we can in the action stage, the create stage, and then letting go of the attachment and being okay with whatever happens.
Exactly. Actually, in that quote unquote protocol that I was sharing, and I'm
Mhm.
sure it applied to the program protocol you used with helping heal the blister, that uh, prerequisite, let's say, to that mindset, to that openness, is clear intention that is tapped into possibilities beyond imagination, and simultaneously letting go of attachment to outcome, which is what you did with the jewelry too. And you knew when you said, oh, I'm letting it go, but then you knew, gosh, I'm still attached. So you took it further. You have to like nurse yourself through that complete letting go sometimes to really let whatever needs to happen happen.
Well,
So
you
I'm
know, when
glad I'm
you,
glad you said something about
yeah,
that.
you know, when you mentioned in your interview that we have to our love our
Oh, make our fears our allies, or
yeah, make
make
our fears, thank you.
yes, something to
And
this effect.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's similar to that. It's like I needed to, with the jewelry, I needed to, like I said, accept, appreciate, and approve of what was happening, you know, to love unconditionally what was happening in order to really let it go.
Mhm. And you know, you share the uh, your mantra, your template, and one thing that I have for myself all the time, but it's again, anyone listening today who knows me as a friend or has worked with me as a client uh, has heard this: intercept and redirect. And I know you and I, it's so tempting not to get into this mode of explaining, but it gives a little bit more context and invitation for our listeners today to absorb these stories. But intercept and redirect. When you become aware of a thought or an experience or an emotional reaction that you're having to something that is less than ideal to what you know you're capable of, you intercept and redirect, which is what I did in those few seconds, stepping out of, like literally my feet over the edge of the bathtub. I intercepted where I was headed with that more fear-based process, and I redirected to this other possibility.
I
And
love.
that point of intercept redirect alone can take practice for a long time. And
Mhm.
it's okay, because you know what? It's you're on the trajectory and you're having fun with it, at least. So, that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stop, look, and listen. Like redirect to another playground.
Yep.
I can play on the playground with my cut forehead, but I can also play on the playground without it.
Exactly. And you and I, in both part one and part two, each in our own way, refer to some of this as neutrality, like that pause that gives you, just that chance to switch channels, right? Anyway,
Mhm.
so, so many more
Yeah, I
possibilities.
have one quickie, quick story that isn't exactly, well, it happened without um, my awareness, so to speak, because this was back in 2011, and those of you that saw the segment, the first series, the first part of the three-part series where Iva interviewed me, I was talking about my 3-year journey being 10, 11, and 12 mostly. So this was during the middle of that, where I would wake up in the morning in that alpha state, and my eyes were still closed when I was in that alpha state, but I was awake, and I would just be relaxed and not thinking of anything, and I'd get all these downloads. Well, I was also in the practice of the night before, every night, I'd say, please allow me to remember what I already know and allow what's ever in my highest and best good to happen. So it was just an intention, sort of like redirecting, as you're saying, before I went to sleep. So
Mhm.
in the mornings, I'd wake up 3 times out of 7 days at least, just constant downloads. Well, one morning I woke up, it was September of 2011, and I had been playing tennis a lot. I was on a USTA team, and I thought, I'm going to have to quit playing tennis. Well, I was thinking this a day or two before this happened. I'm going to have to quit playing tennis because my right knee is hurting so badly. I injured it when I was years earlier when I ran the Indianapolis mini marathon. And so, anyway, I thought, well, I guess I'm going to have to quit playing tennis or have surgery, whatever. That morning, when I was in that alpha state, and before I got out of bed, my eyes were still closed, I saw in my third eye this, in my inner vision, I saw this red grid fly in from uh, the right angle of me, upper angle, right, and it looked kind of like a beehive, and it was probably about 8 inches, like if you put a ace bandage on your knee, a little bit 4 inches above your kneecap and 4 inches below. So it came flying in from the right upper angle, again, this red beehive grid, and just went straight for my knee and settled in my knee like an ace bandage, about the size of an ace bandage. Well, I'm like, what was that? Okay.
Hmm.
I'm here to tell you, I, after that, hiked the Andes. I went all over the world hiking, played tennis after that, no problem. And here it is 10 years later, and my knee is just fine, Iva.
See, I know, Lisa. And what I love especially about what you just shared is, of course, not only the healing in a alternative way of your knee, but that you said that you weren't even, you went into your sleep and coming out of sleep without that conscious intention.
Right.
And that's a reminder that, it doesn't always have to be with clear intention, but something in you was available, for this experience. And maybe even if you weren't available already, divine intervention happens. It's not conditional,
I
right?
wasn't even
It's
thinking,
amazing.
yeah, I wasn't even thinking about, this is way before my instantaneous healings, that happened.
Right. You weren't, the language was
Yeah, that
not
happened in
really there.
2017. That was 6 years later. The language wasn't even there, but it
Mm,
was an instantaneous healing. And I wasn't even thinking I was able to do that.
right. Oh my goodness. So
I
many
know. It's
great stories to
so much
share.
fun.
Um, okay, so do you want me to tell another story, or I feel like you might have another one to share
I'll do
first?
a real quick one that's related to that.
Yeah,
Or not,
okay.
not related to the, well, it's instantaneous healing. And then I'd love for you to share that protocol back in 2017 that ended in September, Mount Shasta. I was going to share with you, just because there's something kind of cute and funny about it. The first event that happened, the first thing that happened to me in June of 2017, where I downloaded that protocol, like having an imprint move from one part of your body to the other part, the part that's well over to the other part, or in this case, it was just remembering at some point in my life when this part of my body was in perfect health, and then just taking that imprint and moving it into the body now. So I was driving
Mm.
on a pretty desolate road in New Mexico, United States, and I was driving towards Sedona, and no, towards Santa Fe. I'm sorry, I was driving towards Santa Fe. Sedona's in Arizona. I was
Oh,
driving,
yeah.
I was driving towards Santa Fe. I'd just been in White Sands, New Mexico, and I had cut up a carrot that morning where I had stayed at this Airbnb. I'd cut up some snacks to eat, and I've never had an allergic reaction, Iva. And all of a sudden, I'm eating this carrot, and my throat got clogged, and I couldn't
Oh,
swallow.
no.
And it was this pressing down sensation. It felt extremely uncomfortable. Of course, I spit out the carrot, the chunk I was chewing on, and I didn't know what to do. I'm driving, there's no one around. And then within seconds, it got a lot worse. And again, I was just baffled. I thought, okay, well, there's really not much hope for me. I'm out in nowhere land. I did pass some crewmen, and I thought maybe I could stop and have them help me, but I think by that time it would be too late, right?
Mhm.
Because my throat was closing so fast. So it got worse and worse, and I was worried I wasn't going to be able to breathe. And then I looked in the mirror, and I thought, well, I look okay. So I thought, wait a minute. I've got this accept, appreciate, approve. So I used that accept, appreciate, approve. Now this was a year before this was a year after the jewelry story. So I did the accept, appreciate, approve with myself. I thought, well, I'm just going to accept, appreciate, and approve of this situation. I don't feel like I'm going to die. I can't die out here in New Mexico. However, if I do, maybe I'll have a near-death experience. It'll be fun. That's the funny
So
part.
you don't want to die all the way, but you were willing to
I,
get close to have an experience.
yeah,
That's
I was
just,
willing to have a
that's
near-death experience.
so much you. Okay.
And that was just enough, Iva, to get me in a better state, to
Yes, I understand.
and redirect, as you're saying, like your story with the cut on your forehead. And so then I all of a sudden got this protocol downloaded, like with the finger blister. And I imagined an earlier time when my throat felt great, and I transferred that energy to my current throat. And Iva, I'm here to tell you, almost as quickly as the attack came on, it disappeared. I mean, just seconds. Boom. I hadn't even had a chance. I did pull over to the side of the road, but it happened all so quickly that I didn't even have a chance to really settle in to the side of the road, turn my car off or whatever. Voila, magic, miracle.
Wow.
Your turn.
Okay, yeah. No need to make more comments. It's just listening in awe. And something very, very special happened while you're telling this story.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm just going to say it out loud and then leave it to speak for itself, and we'll see what happens. And this is not in any way betraying a confidence, very, very general terms. I've been in touch with someone in Sedona, Arizona today,
Okay.
who together we're reinforcing everything you and I are talking about, possibilities of healing and whatnot. I'm not going to say any more on that, except that when you said Sedona, oh, I mean, Santa Fe,
Yeah.
I felt this merging of minds and energies between the three of us, that individual, me and you, in context of what we're talking about. And I saw this looked like a rocket, but completely crystal white. Imagine a rocket, like the ones we send off to the moon and Mars and other places, but this hollow white light crystal rocket that shot right over to Sedona, Arizona, to where this person lives. And that's what happens when we share stories, or when we're in this, call it vibe, in this playground, in these juices, in this mindset, in this openness. Simultaneously, just by telling a story, something is invoked. And who knows, we will never, ever be able to measure the impact and the magical outcomes of moments like you and I are having. Who else got this right now? Or who else is giving that same energy back to us? But it was just I felt myself being transported while you're talking as soon as you said Sedona, Arizona.
Gosh, everything is in divine order. And that little mess up was not a mess up, was it?
Mm-hmm.
It was
Not at
supposed to,
all.
that Sedona
Same
was.
thing you did. Remember in part one when I interviewed you and you were singing one of your, affirmations, and you felt that you went a little too low on the ending of it, with your vocals. But instead, in that split second, it shifted something in my heart that needed shifting that day, right? That was another split second example that we become the gaze of that energy, so anyway.
And by speaking about this, we're taking action to make it physical. It's energy, yet it's making it more physical in this realm.
Tangible, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Introducing it, merging it with the material realm. Exactly.
So I know you have another one up your sleeve, Iva. What do you got?
A couple, one, I keep saying, it's a short story. I know. And probably if we go back in time, how much time I took to tell that short story, it probably wasn't so short. But this one really, for real, it's a precursor. I'm going to and I actually need to keep it just as a suggestion that thing happened, because the one that I really want to share comes after it. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
So again, protocol, programs, applying with the intention of uh, instantaneous, let's say, healing, allowing for something that just does not seem logical in kind of the linear plane that we're so trained with, right? Where usually you have to plug a lamp in the wall in order to turn it on and for the light to shine, right? As opposed to it turning on and giving you light without it being plugged in physically in the outlet, right? So that's the context. I was in a van with a few ladies, friends, very dear friends. We had been all to one of those matrix energetic seminars in Chicago after a long weekend filled with, not just information and knowledge and exercises to stretch and expand and go into all possibilities and then experiencing, how you break out in practice sessions and people come back after the breakup sessions and give testimonials, right? So we were just like, whoa, talk about marinated, right? We were in those juices. Now it's very late Sunday after the end of a 3-day seminar, and we decide to hit the road. 3-hour drive, 4-hour drive back to Indianapolis. Let's go. I sat in the very back because I just was in a very, very quiet place and didn't feel like engaging in conversations or anything. And they were hyped up and excited and just willing, to enjoy each other and have. So I kind of separated a little bit, went to the back of the van. There were, I think we were, a few of us. Don't want to distract myself right now. And then I realized I think I wanted to call my mom, my parents, to let them know we're on our way back. And I noticed like my phone was almost out. Like I didn't want to even call because the call might cut off and it would worry her even more than if she tried to call me back. Like that's how, the bar on the phone, I was in the red zone, the low end of the red zone. So part of me is like, oh, well, okay. And I didn't feel like even talking to ask one of the ladies to take my phone, plug it in, or if they had a charge. Like I just did not want to talk. I was in my zone. However, I thought, wait a minute, again, we're just leaving this amazing seminar with the impossible made possible. My phone is almost out anyway, and I'm really sleepy. Doesn't matter. I'm not making the call anyway. But what if the phone got a little extra charge from somewhere else? Like it's a miracle that we have wires and walls and outlets. I mean, that's a miracle. Energy, electricity, knowing what to do with the wires, like all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever created that innovation, wherever that energy came from, can it not give me that same intelligence through different means again? And then, honest to goodness, I was so tired and so sleepy that I forgot that I even put this thought out. As I was falling asleep, in my mind's eye, with my eyes closed, the moon, like full moon, appeared. And it was as if I was 2 inches away from it. Like I could see it. I could see craters. I could see like, and it had this grayish white and silver, like in the way it appeared to me. It was just like, I just wanted to touch it and lick it. It looked like a scoop on an ice cream cone, right?
Mm.
And then I had, again, in my imagination, I saw a line like a plug drop from the moon. And then it connected to my phone, just like a charger for a phone, but the moon was the outlet. And then I fell asleep, deep sleep, wake up, and my phone was fully charged. I'm not going to say anything else about this, Lisa.
Mm.
Phone was fully charged.
Hmm. Wow.
So
It's similar to your plant story where you
all of
saw
them, like we can go back into
You're in an altered state.
Everything we've shared today, like every
Yeah.
account, every story has like an element of where did this come from? How?
Mhm.
The one that thankfully I have a witness for. It's about time I tell a story that had a witness. My father will vouch for this one.
Yeah.
If I hadn't been too tired and sleepy that night and that, car ride back to Indianapolis from Chicago, like if I had said something out loud to one of the ladies, like my phone is out, then I would have had someone to vouch for that one. But anyway, I'm just making a joke out of
Again, we
this
don't have these before and
witnessing.
after
Yeah,
pictures.
yeah, yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, I'm
We're the
just,
only ones that need to know.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, uh, my mom was going through a healing, and if you take 6 weeks of a healing compared to what in her situation is typically at least months, with unpredictable outcome, then if you take 6 weeks as instantaneous, then that's an instantaneous healing story. But I'm not telling that whole story right now. I'm telling only one night in that 6 week span of a very special moment I had. We had been applying a program that was intended for beautiful outcome, out of the more conventional approach for the most part. And it had to do with the clearing and healing of a cancer cell. And that night, where my parents were in their bedroom asleep, I was in mine, and I just had this urge to go and stand in their bedroom while they slept and to do a silent invocation and prayer. And as I'm in the room standing, I had my hands, palms up, facing up, almost creating a cup with both hands together, because I felt also strong presence of my maternal grandfather, who historically has been a guide and a light companion. And when I was a little girl, he taught me how to lace my fingers together and create that same kind of cup to receive. He used to say, when you do that and you're praying, then the way your prayers are answered and the energy coming in, you have a place to catch it, right? Like that's just a summary of it. But it was with that feeling that I had my hands side by side, not laced, but side by side, praying. And I went into this. I had enough experience by then with this kind of invocation where you get out of the way, and similar to the infinite field you mentioned in your first story with the jewelry, like you just go into this existence where you're aware of everything, but there's nothing to do. And it feels suspended and it feels integrated. And I was in that zone and I was praying. And then as I'm praying, and the prayer was, of course, for mom's healing, and I intentionally was speaking to the cells in the body. And also I thought, well, this isn't just for my mom, it's also for my father. I mean, side benefit to help the arteries of his heart, because that's where his healing was happening. Anyway, so I was in that all-inclusive, and I started a conversation with the cell, basically saying, talk to me. Who are you? Where do you come from? What's your story of all possibilities? That's like the essence of where my mind was in this prayer. And then I started having this experience where I felt like I was being stretched from head to toe. Like now I'm growing past my measly, 5'5" immeasurable physical life here. And then I felt myself expanding, and I was became like this multi-dimensional sphere that was going out and out and out into infinity, like as far as my little brain was willing to imagine. And then, okay, so it was this like expansion and so much more that happened. The essence of it is that I was shown the eternity and infinity of a cell. I'm just going to say just this much right now. Very powerful experience. And my hands were still face up, kind of in this cup shape. And I just was in that trance almost. As I'm in the midst of that, my father, who was the way he was sleeping, they were both fast asleep. I could hear like very deep breathing, little, maybe just mild snoring, but just they were deep asleep. And my dad was laying on his side with his back toward me. And then all of a sudden, I see him moving, and he just like turns all the way over. He turns his head and kind of looks at me, but just squinting because he was still asleep, but kind of awake. So he just squints, looks at me for a few seconds, and turns over and back to sleep. Okay, fast forward. I go back to my room. I hear the whisper that my mom is healed. Ties into every other part of that story building up to that moment, but it was an outcome of that dialogue with intelligence from the field that gave me an understanding of the potential of a cell. And in that context, the message came that she's been healed. I didn't make that announcement, by the way, but definitely stayed with the knowing. The next day, the next morning, the three of us are in the kitchen. Dad's at the sink, getting actually coffee ready with the coffee machine. And he says, "Sweetie, were you in our bedroom last night?" And I said, "Yes." Oops, yes, I was. And he goes, "Something pulled me out of sleep. And when I turned over, I thought I saw you. I knew it was you, but you looked so tall. Your head was touching the ceiling." And then he says, "And what was that perfectly round ball of white light in your hands?" And I froze. It was as if I was transported back to that moment, that same consumed, like awe of being in that energy. And here's my brain ticking to give a quick answer right then and there. Not that he wouldn't get the rest of it, but in that moment, he said, "What was that? Perfect. Like, where did you get it from? What was that thing that you were holding in your hands?" And I closed my eyes and I took a breath and I said, "You know what, Dad? It was love."
Iva, you may have been looking, again, the listeners know we are on video if they heard us at the beginning, and I had to close my eyes and my head started to droop. I was in a trance when you were telling that story. So whatever is coming through you as you tell that story is going out far and wide into every cell and atom of all of our bodies.
I agree.
That is, I think that's an excellent story to stop with.
I think so. I think we've both
Yeah.
given of ourselves in the most sincere and playful way today.
Yeah. Anything's possible, isn't it? And there's always another way.
Enlightened joy, I guess, Lisa, right? Until we meet again.
That's right. Until we meet again.